Yeah, we're all
Yeah.
there together. Good. So welcome. I'm welcoming you actually from Cape Town with the waves actually gently breaking on the beach just right next to me.
Wow.
So, Be'ezras Hashem, we should be doing this from Yerushalayim very soon. Gush Katif, all the beautiful beaches that we're all used to. Well, I used to go to. And Be'ezras Hashem, we should just all be back very soon with Mashiach. And I don't have the full name of our hostage who was just found today, but we should do this literally for an aliyah nashamas of all our kadoshim, all of our kadoshim. And Be'ezrat Hashem, it should bring Mashiach very soon. And also this share is Le'ilu Nishmas Tzipora Bas Binyamin, whose yortzat is tomorrow night. Let's tell you next month. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we should just all have this week a place of really be just knowing and understanding where we are. And I think that maybe our share this week now is also going to help us a little bit with some of that right now. So I'm going to just hand over to you right now, and we will be back with you at the end. But I'm here.
Does this mean we're having challah from Cape Town today? This is very exciting.
No, I'm actually having a bit of a difficult time today myself personally in not having made challah. And the wedding that we're in South Africa for, originally we were doing the challah make next Thursday, and now they're doing it this week because it didn't work out with everybody's party plans. So it's a very challenging day for me, Erev Shabbos without Hafrashas challah. So if anybody does have their challah and they want to wait till the end of the shir to be mafresh, that would be amazing. I should have sent out a message first. And if not, we know that all the Hafrashas and everything we do and all our brachas, our learning and everything should be only for good things. And also lahavdil refuah shalema for Ilana Bas Leah Be'ezras Hashem.
Okay, so that fits in very nicely, actually, but you won't realize till the punchline. So there we go. Okay, always the way. Right. Hi, everybody. As usual, I think you're all extremely admirable for saving your Thursdays. If you're in the middle of doing something else involving concocting beautiful Shabbos thingies, feel free to sort of turn your camera off and just like get on with doing that and have me chuntering on in the background. That's absolutely fine. Actually, I want to share with you, I might have shared this with you before, something a friend of mine told me. It's quite a scary story, actually. It's a scary, not Baruch Hashem, not sort of scary stories we've had to hear recently, but a different sort of scary. She told me about a time that she had, this was in the early days of WhatsApp. These days it's, all over the place, but it was in the days of WhatsApps and groups, and it was a very sort of exciting thing to do. And she got herself onto a WhatsApp group of friends, and it was who used to share pictures of the fantastic, amazing, beautiful desserts they had concocted for Shabbos Kodesh. And they used to post them, and the pictures would start coming in Thursday night, Friday morning, Friday lunchtime. By 2 o'clock on Friday, they're coming in thick and fast. I've made this, I've made that. Oh, please share the recipe, yada, so on and so forth, as it goes. All beautiful. They could all grace the front cover of a food magazine. All beautiful, beautiful recipes. And every so she's trying to make Shabbos and she's in a hurry, but every time the phone goes, I don't know, bing or beep or whatever phones do, she would have to stop and look at it. And each time she was feeling worse and worse and worse, because each time she's looking at these pictures of these gorgeous desserts that people had made. And about an hour before Shabbos, up comes, she's the last one. There's 2 people left on the group, right? She's the last one. I might be changing the story slightly. We're trying to do MS around here at the moment. So if I get the story wrong, I'm very sorry, but here's the basic idea. So she is, she's, it's an hour before Shabbos, and up comes the dessert, almost last dessert, and it looks beautiful. This, incredible thing. Oh, the thing with this group is you have to post the recipe with the picture, okay? And she looked, and she's made, I don't know what she's made, apple crumble, I don't know, whatever. What do you make on Shabbos in the winter when you've just got to be in a hurry and you want something everyone's going to like? Apple crumble, some of those kind of things, right? Apple crumble, chocolate cake, something basic, boring. And she's looking at this picture and she's thinking, oh my gosh, I haven't done it. And this is very scary. This is a very, very, very special friend of mine, a very holy woman. She would never dream of being Machal Shabbos, not in her wildest dreams, right? And she's looking at this picture, and you know what happens next, right? And she's looking at the recipe, and it's an hour till Shabbos, and she's figuring, right, if I quickly do this and quickly make it like that, and it takes this long to make and this long in the oven, I'll quickly run in the shower while it's cooking, and then I'll run down and do the icing. And she's almost getting started, and she told me it took a huge amount of will, of energy to think, what am I doing? I cannot, just because everyone else has posted all the, I haven't got this picture perfect dessert, and I'm about to risk making Shabbos on time just so I can post a beautiful dessert and say, look at what is the matter with me? I'll tell you what's the matter with her. Well, she didn't do it. That's the happy ending, right? Okay, but it was close. It was close. It was close. But here's what happened to her. What happened to her is something I call the Eisav fallacy. Okay, a lot of what I'm sharing with you today is based on the Sfarim of Rav Yisrael Miller. The mistakes are mine, the good bits are his. Rav Miller talks about Parshas Toldos, and he talks about Eisav. Now we think of Eisav as Eisav the Rasha, Eisav the bad, but actually, you know what? You could also call him Eisav the sad. He's one of the saddest. Excuse me. Saddest characters. You know, it's, you know, if you think about his story, here it is. So he's born as his parents are waiting a long time for a child. They daven, that's Yitzchak, Avinu, Rivka, Imenu. If I say it's in a sort of a accent that you're not used to, just turn your camera off and wave at me. Yitzchak and Rivka, they wait a long time for a child. They daven for a child, and Eisav, Rivka actually. Rivka has twins. Yaakov and Eisav, we know they grow up together. They're brought up the same way, but Yaakov ends up wanting to be a stay-at-home. He's called a tum. He's very simple. He in a good way simple, not in a sort of in any deficiency. He sits and learns. And Eisav wants to go out. He wants to engage in the world. He goes hunting. We know that there is an issue with Eisav decides he doesn't want to be the firstborn. He sells whatever that means. He sells his bachara, the right as a firstborn. If you remember that in the end, there's two blessings. One to be the one who does all the material stuff. One to be the spiritual leader. Yaakov gets both of them. Yaakov gets both the blessings. The blessing that was supposed to be Esav's, except he didn't want it, and the one for Yaakov. And Eisav then comes. If you remember, Yaakov got the blessings sort of by disguising himself in Esav's clothes. And Eisav comes to get the brachas. And he says, this is going to be, and I cry at this every year. My kids think I'm so soppy. It's ridiculous, right? But I cry at this all the time. Eisav comes to get the brachas, and Yaakov's, and Yitzchak, his father says to him, I've already blessed your brother. Your brother's taken both the brachas. And Eisav says, yeah, have you only got one bracha? Yeah, my father, how can you only have one bracha? And then he says that Pasuk tells us, right? I'm just going to quote here, right? The Pasuk tells us, Kish Maya, right? He says, "A bracha achas lecha if you got the only one, barcheni gam ani avi, bless me too." It's the saddest one. Me too. Bless me too. And he cries. The Pasuk says he cries, and Chazal tell us because of that cry that he cried, this deep, deep cry. Me too. What about me? Me too. All right. Why can't I do that? Because of that cry, although everything's in Hashem's hands, and obviously he clearly didn't deserve to have his brachas. Because of that, some of the troubles that we have had, specifically talks about the Purim story, that has come down to us because of that. There was something about that cry that was real, that was true. That suffering was real for Eisav. Yes, he did not deserve it. Yes, he got a lot of things wrong. Yes, he'd gone around doing terrible, terrible crimes, but there was a little bit of suffering in there as well. And that's why it's really, really Eisav the sad. But we need to know how we got to that place, because Torah doesn't tell us something just for a nice story. So Rabbi Miller points out we get a lot in the Torah about the baddies, right? We get a lot about what Pare was thinking and what Eisav was thinking. And the reason Torah tells us that is just like we have to look at who gets it right, we need to know what to avoid. So we look at Eisav and we say, well, what was it that made him so sad and bad, right? And what are we going to do to not end up over there? But Ezra's Hashem. So let's have a look at that. And want to go back a little bit, okay? So we said that we have twins. And they're brought up together as twins. And the Pasuk tells us very clearly, if I can find it, here we go. Vayigdal and Haran, the boys grow up, okay? And the growing up together refers to us that we can't criticize our forefathers and foremothers. Is that a word? Foremothers? Okay. Our forefathers and our mothers. We can't criticize that. They're not on the same level, but we do have to learn something. And says Rav Hirsch, it could be the problem was they were brought up together exactly the same way. As he said, that's why it says the pasuk says the lads grew up together, and then it says that Eisav ish their side. Eisav becomes a hunter, and Yaakov ish tam yeshav ahel, and Yaakov is dwelling in his tents, right? And the meaning he's learning Torah. Okay. What's the problem here? The problem is that Eisav and Yaakov are brought up together, and they're brought up in a house of tzaddikim. right? Yitzchak's a tzaddik, Rivka is a tzaddikas. When she lights candles, the light lasts, like Sarah, the light lasts all week. When she makes challah, the challah stays good. There's a cloud of the Shekhinah over the tent. Avraham Avinu, the grandfather's still around the place. He's living in holiness, and these boys are brought up together, and Eisav sees, look, everyone around here is holy, sitting, learning Torah, very spiritual. Here's my brother Yaakov. He's also being holy, being perfectly holy, perfectly spiritual. If I can't be perfect that way, me too, then I'm going to try and be perfect another way. I'm going to be perfectly rotten. I'm going to be perfectly bad. If I can't do it as good as them, all right, and we're going to challenge that in a minute. If I can't do it as good as them, better off, I should be equally good at doing something bad, right? You following the logic? Okay, this is what he's thinking. And you can see why we know it's a mistake, but it's also possible, at least maybe not for you, but I think in these days, even more than it ever used to be, it's quite in sort of our days of, always sort of, well, maybe it's not you, but back to that WhatsApp story, right? We are very much looking at getting it perfect and looking at what everyone else does all the time. We can kind of see why he might have made that mistake. Why might Eisav have thought, if I can't be perfectly brilliant, perfectly good, then I may as well be perfectly bad, but I've got to be perfectly something. Okay, there's no middle ground. Okay, and not really seeing it. So to really answer that, we're going to go back to a pasuk right at the beginning of this chapter, which is very, very well. The pasuk's okay. It's you can understand, but the Rashi on that pasuk is very, very hard. Right, here we go. So we said Yitzchak and Rivka had waited for a very long time to have children, right? And then we have pasuk Vayata Yitzchak la Hashem. And Yitzchak, I think the English word is beseeches. Is that the right word? Like it's not just a nice little daven. He's begging Hashem. He's really, 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 getting into his davening here. Yitzchak Hashem to Hashem leneichach opposite ishtai, right? The yaser lei Hashem. Hashem listens to him. Says Rashi. This is a very difficult Rashi. People get, quite difficult to understand it. Nisfazev nispayes v'ntivchalei. Kadosh Baruch Hu answers him first. Okay, and then why? Because we know that the tefillas of she'ein daimeh tefillas Sadik ben Sadik letefillas Sadik ben Rasha, right? That the tefillah of a Sadik ben Sadik is not comparable to that of a Sadik ben Rasha, which on the surface means that the prayers of a Sadik who's born into a Sadik family, whatever that means, a son of a Sadik, his prayers are completely different league to a Sadik who's the son of a Rasha, of a bad person. Now, obviously, you can't, how can that make sense, right? There's a couple of explanations. The standards one, the one that a lot of people hear, it goes something like this, okay? Somebody who's a bad person and chooses to change that or fix that or do teshuvah, or somebody who is just brought up in a household where they're just accustomed to bad things happening, takes a huge amount of energy to turn that around, to twist it. You take all that energy, which could be bad, and it's huge, that energy, right? And you twist it into something good. It's, Brody compares it to nuclear power, right? You can use nuclear power for, God forbid, blowing up something, and you could also use nuclear power to light electricity for a whole city, right? So they're taking all that power and it's of bad, and it twists to the good. It's huge. It's like stellar. It lights up the world. It's an incredible thing, and it creates an incredible thing. And that's why the Chazal tell us, in the place where a Baal Teshuvah stands, no one else can stand it. It's an incredible thing. Okay, but what about somebody who's brought up, kind of like Eisav was, in a tzaddik household, right? That's hard because there's no light, there's no energy, there's no burst, there's no glamour even to it. It's just the hard work. It's just the hard work in making it your own. It's very easy in such a situation. So there's fun to just drift. You just do what your parents do, you do what your friends do, and there's definitely a value to that. You don't have anywhere near the same kinds of struggles and trials, and it looks like it's relatively easy. But somebody in that situation who still manages to grow and do and innovate their own service to Hashem and do even better and even bigger, doesn't have to be bigger and better publicly, but do something of their own, that takes a huge amount of energy. That is much harder to see. It's the difference between starting from stationary and starting running. Okay, if you've got a huge amount of power and you move that around, there was the power there to start with. Somebody who's got to harness that and build it somehow is there. So that's one understanding of Sadik ben Sadik and Sadik ben Rasha. Okay, that's one understanding. And that's why, for example, if you go back in Jewish history, not that long ago, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, there was this huge big movement called the Kiruv movement, and people would go out to people who who were not aware of what the Torah said, but were searching. There's loads of people searching. They were going off to India and they were going off to the Himalayas and whatever else is. And these people would come and people would go and help them come closer to Torah. And that was, there was this whole movement that's been going on. But in the last, say, 15 years, people have also been working very, very hard on sharing the same wisdom and secrets and excitement with people who were born into religious families, because they also need the inspiration. We all need it, don't we? We also need that inspiration. Okay, so that's one understanding, right? Tzaddik ben Tzaddik, a Tzaddik son of a Tzaddik, and a Tzaddik son of a Rasha. Hashem's going to listen to the Tzaddik ben Tzaddik more. Their prayers are more powerful because of the fact they've had to get so much sort of energy up. It's like, trying to get up a hill to run, much more energy up. That's one way of looking at it. Rav Miller brings the gun, the Vonagun. He says something that I'm going to share it with you, and I'm probably going to get it wrong because I don't really understand Kabbalah, but I'm going to explain it anyway. I'm going to share it anyway as best I can. He says something like this. He said, in the physical world, we know this, right? Because we all read our Emunah books, okay? We know that in the physical world, Hashem, for reasons of his own that we don't understand, seems to give some people physical hardship, and some people get physical plenty. Okay, so there are people who have a lot of wealth, or they, I'm not talking about people who have what we would call undeserved, right? People are, decent people, but they seem to have a lot of money that they can give it to tzedakah. They're comfortable. They can go on holiday. They can give to tzedakah. They can, endow hospitals and whatever they do. That, some people have got, fantastic family situations. Some people have, Baruch Hashem, are very healthy. Some people seem to have a lot of gifts, and some people seem to have more struggles in a physical material world. So if chas v'shalom, some people, if someone's not healthy, or they have family issues, or they have financial issues, or whatever it is, there's always something. Yeah. So some people seem to have that. Some people in the physical world seem to have more than others, and it's not up to us to find out, to decide why Hashem did what he did. He knows what he's doing. We trust he knows what he's doing, and our job is to work with what we've got. And I think a lot of people have learned to understand that, right? We learn our Emunah books, and we learn to understand that. Says the God, it works spiritually as well. There are people, HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts in the world, who seem to spiritually have it all on a plate, right? And they are the ones that they write art scroll books about, okay? So that, for example, some people who, and I'm not talking materially at all, okay? People who grow up in a family of Torah scholars, and they seem to manage without blinking in a 2-foot square apartment in Bnei Brak with no air conditioning. And whatever they daven for Hashem, most of what they daven for Hashem comes, and whoever comes and they manage to welcome with a smile, and they never do all these things. Of course, they have their own troubles and their own nisyanos and their own difficulties and challenges on their level, but to the rest of us looking, it looks like they have everything. They don't seem to have the same kinds of, just like you have physical trials in the physical world, and nisyanos, I'm going to use that word. There seems to be some people who seem to have it coming to them spiritually. The tests that they have are on a level we can't even imagine. They're like not even within our reach. Okay, these, the people who've been able to learn all the way through the Talmud since they were 3, and their tznius was always impeccable, and they're the people we go to for brachas. And Hashem seems to be, we have stories about the miracles they do because they have that. That's a Tzaddik ben Tzaddik, says the God. There's also a Tzaddik ben Rasha. What's a Tzaddik ben Rasha? Tzaddik ben Rasha is those of us who, and again, we don't know why, Hashem has given us spiritual nisyonos, okay? So we're the ones who like sometimes we find it a bit of a rush to get to Shabbos on time. Sometimes we mess up with our Shmira Salash, and we have this Nasai, we have that trouble, and you read these, and we think, gosh, how on earth am I Robertson Kolodetsky? Forget it, I'm never going to be like that. Okay. That's a Tzaddik ben Rasha. Why does Hashem listen to the tefillos of a Tzaddik ben Tzaddik, right? The ones who seem to have less nisyonos, to be on a much higher spiritual plane? Says the Gaon, because their job in the world is to be the role models, like to an extreme. You have to have something to aspire to. And many years ago, I was teaching a lady in a community, and I don't know what she'd read, something or other about the families in Mea Sharim, and she was asking me, why their stringencies and how strict they are. And I said, well, I look up to that. And she said to me, what do you mean you look up to that? I said, everyone's got to look up to somebody like a couple of stages further on. Okay, so you might be looking at me, I said to her, and say, gosh, how does she keep Shabbos and how does she do Melchik and Fleishik? So I'm looking at them and saying, because looking at me saying, yeah, I'd like to do that one day. I'm looking at them and saying, gosh, how do they do this and how do they do that? And I want to be there one day. We all need people that we're going to look up to and say, this is what it looks like when it's at a spiritual height. And therefore Hashem has to make it that their brachas are going to be miskayim, are going to happen, because they are the ones that we're looking towards and are going to inspire us. And their job in the world, their tikkun, the Hashem gave them, is to inspire the rest of us, inspire those of us who are not holding that. The Tzaddik ben Rasha. Okay, so we're not talking about somebody who is or isn't bad, but somebody who has that set up for whatever reason, doesn't seem to shine so brightly. Okay, it's a struggle. I gave this share previous this week, and I compared it to a bit like a lighthouse, right? When you have a lighthouse, okay, the lighthouse is on the rocks and it's bright, it's beaming out. You can see it, all the way across the sea. You have this light beaming out, and across the sea, other side of the sea, you've got the boat. You've got the captain on the boat with his tiny little light over the map on his, I don't know what you call it, it's not a desk, dashboard, whatever you have on a boat, right near the steering wheel. Okay, you have this captain who's going down and up, and the boat's going down and up in the waves, and sometimes he can see the lighthouse, sometimes he can't see the lighthouse. When he can see the lighthouse, he knows which way to go. When he can't see the lighthouse, he has to wait till he goes to the top of the wave to see it again. I don't know, you can wave or something. I guess which one's more important, the boat or the lighthouse? Okay, it's a trick question. Neither. You know why? Because the boat needs the lighthouse. The boat needs the lighthouse or it's going to crash. But here's the thing. There is no point in having a lighthouse if there isn't a boat. Some of us are the lighthouse. Well, I'm definitely not, right? Some of us are the boat. But the bit that I think, I don't know, maybe I'm talking to myself here, but, a lot of us in this day and age, we even have our sort of our spiritual celebrities, don't we? The bit that's very, very, very easy to forget is that if you're the one on the boat, right? If you're the Tzaddik in Russia, and, and sometimes we daven for things and Hashem says, no, and you think, gosh, why aren't I like Rebbetzin and so, right? She gets everything right. She is so holy. She is so wonderful. And when she gives brachas, it happens, right? I wish I could be like that. Hashem says, no, you've got lighthouses and you've got boats. You have a Tzaddik ben Tzaddik, somebody whose job it is to shine bright. And you've got the rest of us who just kind of, we do our thing. Do we know here in this world why Hashem says that you are going to have this style and you're going to have that spiritual style? No, we don't. Right? The Gan talks about, Gilgulim and other areas, things which I totally don't understand, so we're not going over there. Just like we don't understand why Hashem says you are going to have material prosperity, and I'm not pointing anyone on here, by the way, okay, person A is going to have material prosperity and person B isn't. Just like we don't know why Hashem says that this person will have good health and this person has v'shalom. We don't know why Hashem's doing that. We also don't, where we are here, we don't know why Hashem gives some of our neshamas the job of being the lighthouse, the ones who are the inspiration, and others of our neshamas the job of just sort of trundling through. I'll tell you something very interesting. Rabbi Nachman says, right? You know how we have to thank Hashem for our physical nisyonos, right? Just like we thank Hashem for the good things, we also thank Hashem that he knows what he's doing for the bad ones. He says, if you have, this blew my mind when I read this, okay? If you have a spiritual nisayon and you don't pass it, you've set yourself, and I think I'm hearing this from, we're all like trying to be macabre things, right? Trying to take extra on. What if you blow it? What if you miss it? That you also thank Hashem for that. Hashem obviously had a reason why that particular nisayon was too much for you. Okay, even the spiritual things, and it could be, for example, that if we'd managed to part that nisayon, we would have, Hashem ends up being very arrogant about it and judgmental because, hey, it's easy for me, why isn't it easy for them? There could be lots of reasons why not. Maybe we had to daven a bit harder to pass that nisayon, just like we have to daven for physical things. It could be anything. But if Hashem knows exactly what he's doing, and if we're in a position of not being the perfect one, that doesn't mean we have to be looking at the perfect, at what people who see no one's perfect, right? Hashem's perfect. I say that quite a lot, actually. I say that in my line of work quite a lot. I work with young people, and and they come to me and they say, why didn't I get 100% on my test? And why can I say, well, Hashem's perfect? You just do the best you can. It's fine. Okay, we do the best we can, and we're fine. So that's Eisav. That's what I call the Eisav fallacy. I don't know about you, but I think a lot of us kind of work with that if it's not perfect, it's not good enough, then it's no good. And not only that, but everybody around us seems to be getting it perfect. Everybody else, inspirational stories are gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. But the idea is not to make us feel bad. It's to make us like have something to look forward to. Okay, let me reintroduce you to another lady. It's a lady who's not actually in this week's parasha. She's in last week's parasha. She's in next week's parasha. She is next week's parasha. No, sorry, parasha after Vayishlach. And she's also, although I only found this out on Monday, she's also actually in a couple of parashas ago as well. Okay. In last week's parasha, when Eliezer, Abraham's servant, and this does tie in, there's a reason. I'm not just totally changing the topic here. When Eliezer, Abraham's servant, goes to find a wife for Yitzchak, he finds Rivka. Now, Rivka, there's different midrashim, different opinions how old she was, but she goes off to be married, and she takes with her, she takes with her her manika, her nurse, right? Now, this is not the local Lalesh League, okay? This is not the, I don't know, whatever it is, the you know, the nanny or the lactation consultant, Rabbi Miller says. Okay, that's not the point. Who is she? She comes with. All we know is she comes with Rivka. Next, we don't hear anything else about her. 2 weeks' time, we hear that on the way back, right? So fast forward a bit, Rivka has children, they grow up. Yaakov goes to Aram, where his uncle is. He gets married to his cousins, Rachel and Leah. And on the way back to Eretz Yisrael, this nurse, whose name we found out is Devira, dies. And it is such a big deal, right? She's a member of the household, you know, the maid, or that, you know, in those that, you know, these days, I think about like a nanny or something, or a night nurse. And it's such a big deal that everybody stops and mourns for her, for someone we've never heard of. Like she turns up without even a name last week's parasha. She dies 2 weeks in 2 weeks ahead. Who on earth is this lady? Why is it that she's like such a, you know, a big deal? Like, you know, where's this coming from? So where did she come from? I'll tell you where she came from. And I'm just going to thank a lady who's on my share on Monday, because I never had the beginning of the story, and now I have, which is very nice. Okay, so we know that the Torah tells us that Abraham and Sarah, right? Abraham and Sarah made lots of, these days we call them converts, right? They taught a lot of people about Hashem, and they took a lot of people with them when they, you know, and persuaded people and taught people about Hashem. By the time you get to Yitzchak, most of them have disappeared, right? They're not necessarily hanging on anymore. They're kind of dissipated somewhere. So it was beautiful, and they've learned about Hashem, but they're not going to be part of the Jewish people in that way. They've sort of gone off and done their own thing. One of those people who was, you know, influenced by Sarah, okay, by Sarah's lighthouse. Let's go back to that, because I just like that analogy, basically, right? By Sarah, this Sadekas bas Sadekas, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because Sarah counts as a Sadi ben Sadi, even though, you know, her father wasn't such a big Sadik. So goes back to Sarah, and one of the people that was influenced by Sarah was this lady called Devira. Chazal tell us Sarah sent Devira back home. She knew she was going to have to find a wife for her son from her back home. She knew that. Whether she knew it for Ruach HaKodesh with divine inspiration, or because she worked it out logically, it's like, who else is there, right? She knew that was going to happen. So she sends home this young lady that must have been young at the time, that she has influenced. Now, Devira is not a shining light. She doesn't convert loads of people. Miracles don't happen for her. She doesn't light candles and the light lasts. She doesn't make challah and the challah lasts. There's no cloud over her tent, okay? People don't follow her around listening to her every word. Angels don't come and tell her if she's going to have a baby or not. But she's got something, and and what she does, obviously, is when she's bringing up baby Rivka, she's teaching her what she heard from Sarah. She's telling her, I don't know, bedtime stories, whatever she teaches the teacher. She's doing something. She's teaching her something. She's teaching something, and that little something, these bits, because Rivka certainly didn't learn about Hashem from her father or her brother, right? We know that. So this lady, this nurse, Devira, as you know, the word Devira means a bee. It's like she's like taking bits and bobs from here. She bosses around. You know, it takes. I saw this last week. It's very interesting. Whenever I'm going to give a share, Hashem sometimes sends me like a story or something. And I was doing my shopping, and I saw a magazine in the magazine rack, which has a thing on it. It takes a whole hive of bees to make a jar of honey. I don't know if you knew that. Okay, so the lady's name is Devira. It means bee, and that concept is every bee in a hive does a little bit, right? They go with this flower, that flower, that flower, that flower. No one bee is going to get you very far with a jar of honey. I can tell you that. You need a lot, and everyone does a little bit. So this is Devira. She's doing little bit. She's sharing the sweetness of knowing Hashem with Rivka. She goes back with Rivka when Rivka gets married to Yitzchak. And then Rivka does the same thing as Sarah may do. She realizes that she's going to have to send Yaakov back home to Aram to get a wife. So what's she going to do? She can't trust Lavan to bring up her son, her future daughters-in-law. That's not going to work. You know, these are the future ones, Jewish people. So what does she do? She goes, I'm going to send back Devera. And again, we didn't even know her name until she goes, right? She sends back Devera because Devera is going to be able to, nothing stellar, nothing major. You know, we know Rachel, the water rose up to meet her. The water doesn't rise up in the well when Devera gets the well, all right? We don't get any of that. Does for Rivka, does for Rachel, doesn't for Devera. The water doesn't rise up to meet her. Nothing stellar, no major miracles, no anything, but she does something. She shares the bit she has got. She shares the little bit she can do with these girls that she is bringing up. And that's almost in a way, I think, like the opposite, the antidote to the Eisav fallacy, that she does these little bits. Rebbetzin Hella tells a story. It's a Holocaust story, and I'm not normally very big into these kind of stories, but I'm sharing it with you because I think it's relevant for now. And she tells the story of a lady who she calls Dora, and the story sort of begins and ends really in one of the cars that the Nazis in Mashramam squished everyone into. This one seemed to have there were some seats as well. So Dora's and I don't know where she was coming from, but it was one of the places where they thought they would be okay to take possessions with them. A lot of places that didn't happen. So she's got this box. She's got this box of stuff, and she puts the box on the floor, and she manages to find a way to actually sit down. We're not quite sure how sit down. And everyone's squishing and squishing and squishing. And a gentleman comes up, and they're all squished up, and he's being sort of shoved one way and shoved the other way, and and she's got this box like on the seat, and she realizes that there's the box goes on the seat, or the man can go on the seat, and she picks up this box and she puts it on her lap, and it's squishing into her, and she can't hardly breathe because there's this weight of this box and it's squishing. But the man sits down, and because he's got that seat, he makes it and she makes it. After many years later, Rebbe says they ask her what on earth gave her the courage to move that box off the seat and hold onto it. And she says, Dora, she tells a story of being a child in, I'm assuming it was Poland, but I don't actually know, it was wherever it was in Europe before the Nazis came. And she had a sister who was stellar. She said she played it like a diamond. She did everything right. She had Alamina. So she was the best at everything. And then there's Dora, and Dora describes her, or Rebbe Hella describes Dora as, like, you know, when you have a beautiful piece of jewelry and you have to put it, if you have just the jewelry, you have the jewelry, but you put it in the box on a piece of black velvet, and the black velvet makes the diamond or whatever it is shine. She felt like the black velvet for the diamond, right? She was all the things her sister was. She wasn't. She was just normal. And what did she do? And this makes me very soppy, this story. And my Yiddish isn't good enough. But she would tell herself all the time, I'm not much, but epis, which means I'm not much, but I'm something, right? Epis, I'm something. And knowing I'm something gave her the courage to move that box and save someone else's life. Ladies, we've got to do this epis business. We're not all going to be perfect. We can't get it perfect. But you know what? So what this parasha tells us is you don't have to get it perfect. We don't have to. Every little thing we do, every person we reach out to. And, you know, I think one of the things that's very, very beautiful at the moment is when all these, you know, these troublesome times started, nobody said, okay, everyone has to do everything. Across the world, everyone's been saying, do a little thing, do something, do one thing. You know, there's just a lot of these sort of just one things going around, just one thing. And nobody says, well, what do you mean just one thing? We need more than that. We need tons, do more. No one's saying that, right? We don't need to say me too. We don't have to even know what the just one thing is that someone else is doing. That's totally irrelevant. My just one thing might be something you don't even know about. Some just one things are, you know, beautiful and stellar and amazing and inspiring and everyone knows about it. And some just one things is one person's little thing that they are going to try and do. That is nothing to do with anybody else. It's none of their business. But I'll tell you something, Hashem knows, right? He's recording it all. He knows all our just one things. We don't have to pass every sign. Okay, that sounds a bit heretical, doesn't it? But we don't. We have to, we do bits, right? We do bits here, we do bits there. You know, Rabbi Tatz points out there's anything that's true has a word in the Torah, and anything that's not true doesn't. So, for example, there's a word for love, ahava, because that's real. Love is real. There's no word for romance because that doesn't last. Okay, there's a word for happiness, but there isn't a word for fun. I'll tell you something. There's no word for should in the Torah. Right, I say this a lot. There's no word for should. When Hashem tells us something, he says, you do you know, yes, Deborah says, you know, it says, you will keep Shabbos, you do this, you do that. And if on the Chas v'Shalom we get it wrong, Hashem doesn't say you shouldn't have done it. He says, you did this, and this is what's going to happen. There's no word for should because it doesn't work like that. It works like this. You do what we can. Not I should have done it differently. I should have done this. I should have done that. This is what I've got. I don't, no, should have. It isn't there, right? This is what I do. And Eisav's massive problems the whole time he was saying it should have been different. I should have like this. I should have like that. I should have done the other. I could like this. It is what it is. We have what we have. Hashem gives us omniscience, so we keep going. And to finish off, I want to share with you an exercise. Okay, it's inspired by a very, very special lady that I know who is going to remain nameless. And what I'd like, it comes from a time where I was struggling, and it was with whatever I had to do at the time. It was a particular Messiah, and I kept, I've done it wrong. I mean, I'm useless. I've done it wrong. Okay. What I'd like to do, you can turn your camera off to try this if you want. Please don't dislocate your shoulder in the process, but would you mind just patting your own back? But do like this, and you will notice, Joanna, are you still there? Because I'm about to get to my punchline, and I don't want to have the punchline then have a silence because it looks really, really awful. Is she there? All right. Okay. Never mind. Okay. So worst case, she's there. Okay. Right. So on your back, if you would pat your back, or have a reach, you will notice there's something missing. Right? There's something missing. I'll tell you what's missing. There's missing some wings. This very special lady said to me, and I'm going to leave you this one. She said to me, Aidel, Hashem can do all sorts of things. Hashem can do anything. If Hashem wanted another perfect angel, he would have given you a pair of wings. Ladies, if you don't have a pair of wings, it's because Hashem loves you just the way you are, to do just the way you do. We pass the things we pass, we don't pass the things we don't pass, and we're happy with what Hashem has given us. Have an absolutely beautiful Shabbos.
Thank you very much, Aidel. That's wonderful.
Thank you so much. That was such a sweet thing. That was gorgeous. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good. Thanks.
Thank you. That was very encouraging.
Lovely, Freya. Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. Very nice.
Thank you, Shreya. Thank you.
Good Shabbos. Thank you.
Good Shabbos.
So there we go. Yeah, I got back finally. I've been sitting and listening, and I did have the punchline, and I was here, but I couldn't turn on my phone to get me unmuted. So thank you. That was beautiful. And even listening to the waves crashing on the, just breaking gently. And thank you, Aidel. We should always just be blessed to be inspired by doing the best that each and every one of us can do without thinking that we have to have and reach perfection. So thank you, everybody, for being with us. Wishing everybody a Shabbat of Shalom, Be'ezrat Hashem, and we look forward to being with Mashiach and next week, before next Shabbos. And if not, we're going to be back together. So, Hashem. So thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.